Welcome to the Wild Remedies podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Ancora, and I'm here to bring you captivating stories from some of the most fascinating people I've connected with on my own journey of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of the Wild Remedies podcast. Today, we are interviewing Stephen Dinan, who is the founder and CEO of the Shift Network. So something you may not know about me, I'm a manifesting generator in human design, which means that I do a lot of different things. I wear a lot of different hats. So on top of being the founder and CEO of Wild Remedies, I am also the creative director at the Shift Network and have worked with Stephen for about 2 years now. And I absolutely love working with Shift. You know, being an entrepreneur, I've found it difficult in the past to align myself with other companies, mostly because I want to do things a certain way and all of these things, which can be difficult when you're working for a corporation. However, I've just had such a beautiful experience working with Shift. I just find that Stephen has such a beautiful way of leading a spiritually based company in a way that allows people to just be able to contribute with their gifts for the greatest good. A little bit about Stephen. He is a graduate of Stanford University in human biology and the California Institute of Integral Studies. He co-created and directed the Esalen Center for Theory and Research, which is a think tank for leading scholars, researchers, and teachers to explore human potential frontiers. And he also served as the director of membership and marketing at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. If you haven't heard of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, it's really cool. I highly suggest you look it up. I wanted to dig into this more with Stephen, but we just talked about so many wonderful things having to do with spiritually led businesses that we didn't have time. But I first heard about the Institute reading a Dan Brown book. Like years ago. It's a fictional book, but Dan Brown, if you haven't read any of his books, I think there's like the Da Vinci Code. He's got like a ton of them. But he references this institute, which I thought was fictional. And I looked it up and realized that it's a real thing. And so what they do is they do real scientific experiments on consciousness. It's incredibly fascinating. So I highly suggest you look into it after this. Stephen is also an author. He has a book called Sacred America, Sacred World, Fulfilling Our Mission and Service to All. And he's also a member of the Transformational Leadership Council and Evolutionary Leaders. And he's been a featured speaker at many international conferences, including the World Cultural Forum in China, the Alliance for a New Humanity in Costa Rica, and, oh no, I can't pronounce this, Renovemos? I apologize. I just butchered that. Mexico and Mexico City. He lives in Northern California with his beloved wife, Devaa, who's absolutely wonderful, and their 2 daughters. So this is an episode for anyone who wants to be inspired in business. You know, the Shift Network is now a mid-sized business. We help people all over the world and promote beautiful spiritual experiences for people through all kinds of our courses and promoting some really fabulous teachers that focus on spirituality and all kinds of energy healing. So we will have links in the show notes where you can learn more about the Shift Network. And let's just get into having a chat with Stephen. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So without further ado, let's chat with Stephen Dinan. Welcome, Stephen. I'm so happy that you are joining us today on the Wild Remedies podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. And it's good to be here with you. I love your work. So fun to do this.
Yay. I'm so excited. For everybody just listening, Stephen is an absolutely wonderful entrepreneur, merging business and spirituality. And I've had the pleasure of getting to work with him for the past, it's almost 2 years now, I think, hey, at the Shift Network.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I support the Shift Network with some creative stuff. I'm the creative director there. And I've absolutely enjoyed my time working with the company that you've built, Stephen. It's such a beautiful culture.
Thank you. Yeah, when you add to it.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, so excited to have you today and just to get to pick your brain a little bit about, you know, I really would just love to know about how your background and how you started the Shift Network. I know it's a really cool, divinely guided um, experience, and I'd love for the listeners to hear all about it.
Yeah. So, yeah, where to start? I mean, so I wasn't always on a spiritual path in my teenage years. I was super ambitious and always going after like the next big run up the next mountain. I was very competitive into sports and trying to, and, I went to Stanford undergrad. And so I was kind of like running up this next mountain all the time. And actually, it was as an undergrad, I was judgmental at first of people who I knew who were experimenting with psychedelics. But then I tried psychedelics and opened up this whole other experience of the universe. It was clear that it was like the sort of scientific materialism that I was largely my dominant paradigm at the time wasn't adequate. It had some shortcomings, and that there was a whole other layer of reality that was really a sacred reality, and that there's a whole different way of being within the world. And so that led me into things like Tibetan Buddhism, and I started doing things like past life regression hypnosis and exploring shamanism and transpersonal psychology. And I got very voracious with books and experiences. And that eventually led to the California Institute of Integral Studies, where I studied East-West psychology. So I got more steeped in the frontiers of the fields that were interesting to me, like the interface between psychology and spirituality, and what were the leading edge disciplines for transformation. And I didn't have a particular game plan. I was more just curious and wanting to explore. And that curiosity and exploration led to India, it led to a whole variety of other places, and eventually landed me through a series of synchronicities at the Esalen Institute. So I'd gotten a master's degree in East-West psychology. And so I had this role for a while where I was Michael Murphy's sidekick. It was sort of not the official job title, but essentially activating think tank things on the leading edge of different fields: subtle energies research, survival of bodily death, integral capitalism. So what I got good at is seeing where are the leading edges of a domain, where is the culture evolving to the next level, where's the paradigm shifting, and who are the people who can catalyze the next evolutionary leap in that area. So we would convene 15 to 20 thought leaders, do deep dives, synthesize what was going on, create strategic plans for what research needed to be done. And it was a really interesting job, but it was very kind of academic and think tanky. And I didn't really have any business aspirations at that point. I was really more of a writer, scholar, and explorer, and I was pretty deep on my own explorations and path. And so I had done a lot of meditation retreats. I was like 10, I had done 7 or so at that point, 10-day meditation retreats in silence and vipassana, just meditating 16 hours a day. And during one right around the turn of the millennium, so this goes way back, my crown chakra opened up the top of my head, and sort of this vision poured in for days. Like it would just all these details, and
Whoa.
it was one of the most powerful kind of openings I'd had. And it was really clear that I needed to create this somehow, even though I didn't have a background in business or didn't have any money or didn't have any, I had a lot of things that were lacking in my toolkit at the time. But it was just really clear that no, this is like what I would need to dedicate my life to. And because it was so palpable and so powerful and so real, and a lot of the details be like affiliate plans and local hubs and online network, and we've only built like 3% maybe of that original vision, and I assumed I could get it done a lot faster, but their technology needed to evolve, and I needed to evolve, and all these other things. But basically, for 3 days, I just got this like kind of burning bush moment of seeing what I needed to do with my life, and then it took a long time to build the capacities to deliver. So I tried to get it off the ground, went pretty much belly up financially. Had to then back into some other ways to do it, build capacity and skills. We can go into some of that, but I think the most salient point for entrepreneurs out there is just to first of all trust when you have a sense of like a higher vision that's really compelling you, that feels like it's yours to do. Just trust that as your North Star, and then see whatever setbacks come as opportunities to grow yourself to be able to deliver that, rather than it's like a signal. It's like, oh, maybe that the vision was wrong, or that's not the right direction. It's more like, oh, this is just, these are ways they're going to test me and grow me and lead me in some other directions. But I think that the thing that I did probably that I'm most proud of is just stay loyal to that North Star download vision that I got. And it took a good 10 years of laying groundwork in different ways to eventually be able to get it off the ground. And now we've started to deliver on that vision, but still a big vision relative to where we are. And so it still is a North Star, and it has a lot of different dimensions to it, and the pathways and the people and the how unfolds over time. But there's a sense of like, oh, this getting clear about what you're really here to do on the planet, and then creating a business out of that, I think is the best way to go. Because when you get that clarity, then you've got all the forces of your soul and higher intelligence and whatever game plans and collaborations you've laid down with other souls are backing the plan, rather than it's just, oh, there's a market and there's a good business idea and you can make some money at it, which doesn't have as much power behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, I absolutely love that story. And, it parallels mine a little bit with Wild Remedies in a sense, because I feel like I also had a divinely guided experience. Wasn't quite as profound. It was more of like outward messages. But it was sort of the same thing at the time where I was like, getting these messages to look into these different medicinal mushrooms and things. And I was like, I don't know anything about this, right? And my background is design. And I knew nothing about creating a health food company. And it really is, it's just about this trust, right? And having this deep seated, I guess, guidance and knowing that this is the thing that you're meant to do in life. And so you just put one foot in front of the other, even though it's really scary and financially it can be, extremely challenging at times. And so I just really, really appreciate your perspective on this, and hope that other people can learn from this experience as well. Because right now, I mean, Shift is getting to be a pretty big company.
Yeah, I mean, it's big relative to small companies. We've got 75 team members and a lot of great contractors and a few hundred faculty. We've got 3 million people on our active email list. And so, it's sort of like getting into the mid-sized company range. And it's really clear to me that, like, from the beginning, that this needs to be a global company that's reaching 100 million plus people, and that is really like a major company on the planet. And that's still a long ways off. So it's just trying to keep the one foot in front of the other and trusting the unfolding, and seeing sometimes what happens is still preparation for whatever's coming next. So, oh, this challenge, this person, it's just, if we assume it's all happening for us rather than to us, as an entrepreneur, I think it's easier to metabolize whatever comes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, for people who haven't heard of the Shift Network before, how would you describe it?
Well, really, and on the simplest, like, metaphysical level, it's like we're just amplifying the wisest voices we can. And so we're creating a platform that allows the most awake, conscious teachers in different modalities of personal transformation to teach mostly live programs, and then eventually evergreen programs to a global audience. And so, I think we're in our sweet spot of genius when we take somebody like Puma Quispe Singona, who's raised from the age of 6 by his grandfather to be a medicine carrier within his lineage in the highlands of Peru, lives in Chinchero, and he somehow got turned on to us featured in a summit, and now we're doing all these programs, leading a trip down to Peru, and his grandfather told him he was going to be a world healer someday, and he didn't even know what that meant. But now he's a world healer because he's got hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 people in his programs online with the Shift Network. And he was not somebody who was like going on Oprah and had a big best-selling book and all like the kind of traditional pathways to becoming a transformational teacher writ large. Like, he was more like just really authentic wisdom carrier for his tradition. And so that's when I feel most proud of what we've created, when we can take people who have real genius and gifts and wisdom to share, but they don't really have the marketing, internet, all that kind of chops to get it out there. And then we can help amplify them and make them into a global voice that people can really receive. So, that's, there's plenty of teachers who have been very well established and sold 1 million books and this and that. And in some ways, it's great to feature them, but it's not as much of a value add for us to do that, since they already have access to a global audience. But it's like providing that next tier of teachers who are up and coming, who might represent wisdom lineages, who don't have internet skills, who haven't ever published a book, giving them a platform in which to really teach a dynamic live environment with people around the world. That's when it's sort of most exciting what we're doing.
Yeah. I remember when I first started at Shift and I saw that Puma was one of the faculty, and I was just so delighted because I met him about, 10 years ago now, when I did a trip to Peru. And he just has the most fabulous energy. Like, he's just the happiest guy that I think I've ever met in my life. And, a lot of his focus was tourism in order to, bring revenue and things to his community, and being able to show people the tradition in that area. And I'm just, yeah, I absolutely love that you guys are able to amplify voices like his, and also be able to have people experience the medicine that people like him are able to provide. That's really, really exciting.
Yeah, and as a change strategy, I mean, what's clear to me is that most of our real challenges as a species come from a lower level of consciousness. We're kind of stuck in a more egoic, competitive, sometimes violent way of engaging other humans. And so the more we evolve ourselves into our own divine self, into our higher self, that we have more of our potential to access. We're more clear on what we're here to do, and we're also more embracing of the entire human family. And so when we're amplifying wisdom voices from every major lineage, that also is helping to heal some of the breakage points in humanity and uplift the consciousness. So on a simple level, if we evolve enough people's consciousness on the planet, we're going to have a much better planet, and we'll be able to, make the shift in time to a more global, integrated, peaceful, healthy, and prosperous civilization. And I do believe that we are going to make it. I think it's going to get precariously close, and that's part of how humans often learn. You have to kind of go up to the edge of things, and it seems like maybe we're not going to make it over the edge, and maybe we're going to have an ecological crash. But I actually think we are going to make it. But it's this kind of gradual up leveling of consciousness that is behind. It's a driver. It's not as obvious, but it's a driver of, like, when you have more awake, clear, aligned human beings who aren't acting out their trauma, who aren't polarizing against each other, then it's just a lot easier to create a healthy and harmonious planet.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like that really is the importance of what, you're doing, what we're doing, by, showing people that it's important to honor the wisdom traditions and become open to more things like metaphysics. There is just so much out there that I think a lot of people don't realize there's more to reality, and there is a huge shift in consciousness happening right now. It's a little bit uncomfortable. Well, it's really uncomfortable. But it's definitely leading us down a path that I agree with you. Like, I think things will get better. It's just it's a challenging time right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and people need this information more than ever, And so,
Yeah.
what's cool about the Shift Network, for anybody's that's listening, there's just a huge body of work from some of the most, like, the biggest leaders in the industry when it comes to energy healing and metaphysics, and again, like, wisdom traditions. And it really is just a source of the best quality teaching I think there is out there, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I would encourage people. I mean, I think it's great to access what we're doing, and we welcome you to come. And I also, just for the purpose of entrepreneurs, I think that if you think of it as like you're here to express your spiritual mission through a business partially, and that part of what we can do is also provide some inspiration for how to keep clearing and aligning, because as an entrepreneur, like the challenges that we run into are often reflections of places that we need to grow or expand in some way too. And so whatever we're running into, it's like, can we up level our perspective on it so that we kind of see it in a different light, and to actually address that, whatever the challenge is, in a different light. So there's that pivot from, like, oh, why is this happening to me? Or it's more like, oh, what's the opportunity here? How do we take it to the next level? And so I think if you approach entrepreneurship from a spiritual lens, it's actually makes it easier and ultimately more effective to do so, because we're not getting bogged down in certain patterns. We're sort of like, oh, being curious about how might we approach that differently? How might we change that direction?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And what I find too is that when you are approaching something as well, typically masculine as entrepreneurship or how it was before, um, it just seems like there's more of a balance between the masculine feminine now.
Mhm.
Um, I very much experienced that at the Shift Network, which I think is really beautiful. Is that something that you've noticed as well, or try to focus on?
Yeah, it's actually, I think of the root level shift that the planet is going through is the rebalancing of masculine and feminine. So, when masculine is kind of predominated, which it has largely for millennia, it's like it creates certain systemic, problems. So violence between nations and sort of like increased polarization. And then so like as there's this upsurge of the feminine and also a reclamation of spiritual lineages that are led by women and women mystics, and there's a lot of that we do, and probably 75 or 80% of our customer base are also women as well. So there's a reclamation of a more feminine approach to spirituality, to awakening, to practice. And as we do that, we kind of balance ourselves out, and then we're better vehicles for this kind of emergent paradigm perspective to land in. And so I think traditional business has been a highly masculine tilted industry just in general, as like a lot of the values and the priorities. And I think now we're sort of really learning how to integrate a more female leadership, more feminine perspective on, and some of that is, it's like, what is it in service to? It's like sometimes there's been a tendency to just make business about in service to profit making and return on investment alone, versus like actually what's the kind of deeper mission, and how do people themselves thrive within that, employees and customers. There's a sort of a kind of a care for the greater whole, and the care for the local that's not quite so narrowcast, just like how do I make the profit and to return the investment. And so the traditional businesses tended to be a little bit more exploitive and create a lot of collateral damage that gets externalized, versus like we're now really in a mode of, inspired by folks like Patagonia as an example, where they're like consecrate the entire company to the betterment of humanity. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. For us, I think it's trying to keep the mission at the foreground, while also really looking at how can everybody thrive within that mission as an embodiment. And it's not always easy, and there are challenges. I don't want to sort of sugarcoat it. We've had to go through cycles where we've had to lay people off because there wasn't enough income coming in, and that sort of thing. And that's part of the business cycle. So we're not immune to that necessarily, but to try to do that in a way that has the care for the greatest number of beings involved. And that we can do that. So we could talk about other things that we've done to try to like increase the consciousness of the business and how we're doing that, which I think people may be interested in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear about that. And just to kind of reiterate what you mentioned about, you know, business still needs to operate as a business, right? And even though difficult situations do arise, it's remarkable to see the difference, how those challenges are, I guess, handled when there is a higher vision in mind and it comes from a more feminine space. So like there are a lot of companies right now that are going through layoffs and stuff. And I know that, there was a situation at Shift where we needed to look at that. And it was done in such a compassionate way, that I've never experienced before working with other companies. And even though it was difficult for all people involved, it was very evident that it was difficult for everybody, right? It wasn't just somebody at the top being like, okay, well, this is what's best for business, and we're just cutting people out. It was a compassionate process, which was, I think, it was wonderful for me to see. especially as somebody who is kind of at the beginning stages of, entrepreneurship with this company. I just really valued seeing that experience and hope that, if it ever comes to that at some point, that I would be able to handle it with as much grace.
Great. Well, I'm glad that that was how it all landed for you. It was definitely hard, and
Mhm.
as I said, it's those are the moments that it can be most difficult to enact your values. But I think one thing that's just that we really tried to do fairly early on is have more consciously articulated set of values, and that then we're holding ourselves to that standard. So this is where it's like having a higher mission that inspires people. It's not just something to put down on a piece of paper, but it's something that kind of helps to focus our collective attention on something bigger than any individual. And so the mission and the vision of where we're headed is like really important, because that starts to crystallize something in people's consciousness of what's possible. And so a lot of my role is always trying to be painting those pictures of the visionary possibilities that we're moving towards. Then values really become like an operating system of like, what are we anchoring our attention in as a culture, and how do we build that in as a culture? And so I think these things are all part of somewhat of the standard operating system of business. But if you think of it more of like a way to organize an energetic system, like everybody is contributing to creating an energy of that has focus, that has direction, that also has an integrity to it, then it sort of it almost has like a higher function. It's rather than, oh yeah, we should do that value, do something with the values or whatever. It's more like, oh, that's actually an important process to really tune in about what is the uniqueness that we are trying to embody and activate in our culture, and then hold ourselves accountable. So we do send out a quarterly survey about how we embody in our values, and it's anonymous, so people can provide feedback about all the different ways that they see that we're not, or that we could do better. And sometimes that's a micro level, sometimes a macro level, and can't always make all the changes right at once, but it's more like this keeps you on the journey of embodying the values more and more, and that creates the integrity, which then ultimately attracts and retains people. And I would say one of the things that I've been most happy with like in some ways the aftermath of needing to do some downsizing is that we didn't lose anybody else. So it's sort of like there's people still kind of were invested in the community, the vision, and the mission. So sometimes it can create a longer term wobble in the culture. So they say that as you get to be a bigger company or mid-sized company, it's like culture tends to become more and more important as a way to sort of keep people operating at the same level, because there's a lot, people come in with all sorts of different backgrounds and experiences, and so there can be mixed motives and sometimes lower motives, and it's like you want to kind of set a high bar for what the company can be. Then I think there's also just a role for really embracing people as their full selves. So that's part of why we do have a community call every week, our all company call, and we do a fair number of community centric things, and having breakouts and encouraging people to reflect on deeper dynamics, and sometimes doing meditations and practices together, because those things are unifying and they also express our values. We used to do those in circles when we were small enough and we all were local, that we would kind of meet in circle and kind of take off our work hats and just share on really kind of a heart and soul level and be really real with each other. And that creates an environment where people don't feel like they have to have a work hat and a personal hat that are fundamentally different, or like a facade they put on at work, that they can really be them. And that makes a difference in terms of feeling like if they're going through a hard time, they can share that with their colleagues, or that they can be real about some of the challenges they might face in their life. And so I think that all those are part of creating a more conscious enterprise. We also did things at the beginning, like we set aside 2 million shares, about 20% of the founding stock of the company. We set aside to dedicate for nonprofit foundation purposes. And through our whole journey, we've done philanthropic events. We've raised money for different charities. We've made commitments to Indigenous peoples with a declaration of commitment to the Indigenous peoples. We've did a whole Peace Week and Peace Ambassador kind of training, and created a World Peace Library. So we've had commitments in the fields of women's empowerment, of peace building, of indigenous rights and activism, as well as what I call politics 2.0, democracy 2.0, where it's more about like, being involved in democracy, not as much as partisan politics, but as more of like just really seeing our civic duty as part of our spiritual practice as well, and how to engage in that way that uplifts the collective and focuses on collective problem solving. So we did a whole series of conferences in Sacramento focusing on game-changing innovations. And there's only one example. There's a fellow named David Gershon who'd created this beautiful program at a local level called Cool Blocks and started to do cool cities. And we encouraged him to do a whole cool California presentation and show how California could lead the way. And eventually got him connected with the governor's office. And now it's like, California has been implementing and working with him, and there's got several billions of dollars of funding behind this initiative to basically decarbonize the economy of 3 cities first by 2030, and then 25 next year they're going to be submitting applications, and it's like basically making a major contribution to climate change. And we helped to incubate that and to empower David to have a platform and stage to reach more people, introduce him to people. So those are all, we've done a lot of those kinds of things in parallel, and sometimes we've gone a little too far. Like lost a little too much money on that conference. Got to come back and focus on the things that people are willing to pay for. And then there've been times that we did a big online music festival and consecrated the entire thing to tree planting and set some bold goals and raised enough money to plant 250,000 trees. And so we're still en route to our larger goal of planting 1 million trees as a forest. And we do plant 10 trees a month for each employee as part of a carbon offsetting forest restoration project. So those are just some of the kinds of things that we do. And so thinking about that is like, it's not just nice and philanthropic, it's also good business too, because it's like people these days, they have a lot of options of where they can work. People want to work somewhere that they're proud to be and that they feel good about and that aligns with their values. And so it's part of attracting high quality caliber people and retaining them to sort of walk your talk and have some positive impact initiatives that we can stand by. We also have done a number of things in the kind of racial healing arena, and everything from podcasts to donations to some trainings. And so there's been various areas that we feel like are helping to shift the collective in a positive direction that might not be as easy to monetize, that have nonetheless felt really important to invest in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that contributes so much to the work culture, I think. I know for me, the philanthropic work that Shift does is incredibly important. And it's significant too, right? Like the amount of philanthropic work you guys do is a lot. Like there's been a lot of money and time donated to really amazing and worthy organizations. And to me, that just also shows a lot of integrity, right? Like that's really how we move things forward when we are wanting to, make better changes in the world. Yeah. And another really interesting thing too is that what I hear time and time again from, folks that work with Shift is that there's very much a family dynamic. Everybody feels like this is family, but everybody's remote right now. And so that's really cool that people are still feeling that like that, even though it is a remote working situation. Has everyone always been remote? Like you guys had an office at one time, didn't you?
Hi, I'm Maddie. Let me tell you a quick story of how I'm supporting my PCOS with Wild Remedies Spiced Chocolate Magic Latte. First of all, I'm a registered holistic nutritionist, so I'm investing in finding long-term, sustainable approaches to wellness. Living with PCOS, when things are feeling a little out of balance, it's common for me to wake up groggy, have blood sugar crashes throughout the day, or become totally overwhelmed by daily stressors. My morning coffee was causing blood sugar spikes, anxiety, and tummy trouble, so I swapped it for Wild Remedies Spiced Chocolate Magic Latte about a year ago. And believe me when I tell you that the change has been insane. Each sachet has 3 servings of wild Siberian chaga, a powerful antioxidant-rich adaptogenic mushroom that helps to fight inflammation and fatigue and regulate the immune system. It tastes like a creamy hot chocolate with just a hint of spice, and it keeps my stomach calm. Since swapping, I feel more clarity and calm throughout the day, and my morning magic latte helps to set clear intentions for the rest of my day. I save 15% on my monthly subscription at wildremediesshop.com, and at $2.50 per serving, it's saving me a ton on Starbucks runs and supplement orders. Check out the links and promos in the show notes to get your own. Your adrenals will thank you.
Yeah, we had office and little campus, and we've definitely focalized more around the local, and we would try to hire locally so that people could come in. It's really more. It started to kind of widen pre-pandemic, and then pandemic kind of accelerated things because a number of different executives. There was one was getting married to somebody on the East Coast, and so she moved out. And then, it ended up being really good because it just allowed us to hire the best people where they were, and to not worry as much about location or FaceTime. And I've become a fan of remote work also for myself too, in my own lifestyle. Is that we are now we have 2 daughters. One is almost 3, and one is 5, and we have a little school on our property. And we also have been activating this interesting side vision of world schooling hubs. And so the thesis is that world is your classroom. And so they're technically the 5-year-old is technically homeschooled, but we have a kind of homeschooling pod. And then we are doing that also with 6 weeks in Mexico in the winters. And so we not only is it lovely to be in Mexico in the winter, but it's also a good cultural exchange opportunity. We want our girls to really grow up a sense of being global citizens, and being able to not just take a quick vacation somewhere, but kind of get into a culture. So, we're looking forward to sort of cycling more cycles with that, where it's like a part of a new education model where we're bringing in more of our kind of personal transformation practices and communication practices. And, the girls, they know a lot about a lot of things that I certainly didn't when I was 5 years old. And so being able to work remotely allows me to sort of just work on a normal schedule from Mexico. And we were partly inspired by one woman named Ana Maria on staff who didn't even have a home base, or kind of had a home base in California with family. But basically she and her husband and 2 kids they would go and live for 3 months one place, live for another place 3 months, live for another. And so she had done that for several years and was working well for Shift. And so it was like, wow, that's a great model for raising their kids more globally and internationally. And so we decided to kind of approach it a little bit more like a portion of the year. But I think working remotely allows you to do that, and to design in sort of, things that are more of your vision for what you want for your life, or bucket list things, or cultures you want to explore. And that creates a certain dynamism of your own growth as an entrepreneur too. So I think that's obviously, there's a burgeoning population of digital nomads out there, but I think even people who want to build not just a solo thing, but build a company, you can do it pretty effectively now remotely.
Yeah. And I think people are really searching for that and are kind of used to it already too, right? Like everybody is pretty digital now. And I know for myself, I feel like I'm actually really lucky because when I was in design school, gosh, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago, the word digital nomad wasn't even a thing. And I didn't really realize at the time that I had an entrepreneurial spirit. But I feel like there's really no other way that I can function than working from home. I've worked for companies that have had really cool offices and whatever, but just the nature of having to commute and all of these things, it just takes big chunks of time out of your day. And I love the aspect of being able to connect with friends and, the social aspect of going to the office from time to time. But I also really do value just being able to have extra time in the morning to do a morning routine or whatever that is. And I think a lot of people are now kind of expecting that a little bit too, or at least being able to have the flexibility. So it's great that Shift embraces that.
I think the genie's out of the bottle. It's going to be very hard for,
Yeah.
most, knowledge-based industries, at least, to go back to being fully in person again. You're going to have to kind of fight upstream. And why not do the other? It's like if you can have really, if you get better and better at creating cultures that are connected, intimate, and empowering even at a distance, why not do that when people, and gives people the option to live where they want, since it's like the differential between the population centers that have been kind of super expensive and have higher salaries, and then we live on 30 acres of forest now, and our house is twice as big as it was in Marin, and 30 acres of forest, and we have this beautiful land, and it's like, the price is less than when we were living in the Bay Area. So it allows us to live, for me, in a more rooted, connected way. I didn't even realize the ways that in suburban area of San Francisco, there's a kind of a buzziness or a disconnection sometimes from the natural rhythms that fuels certain patterns. It's a little kind of like hyped up or something, whereas like living in the trees kind of settles things into a deeper rhythm too, which is good as a balancer for me as being a CEO of a company.
Yeah, absolutely. You're living my dream, Stephen. I want to
You're
get some
living your dream.
land. Well, I've been chatting with my sister actually. She has a small farm in northern Canada and she wants to move down south. And I'm also feeling very called to get some land. So we're thinking about purchasing some land together and potentially, having a healing center or something on there at some point. And how lucky are your little girls too that they get to grow up in that way? I also kind of have a similar vision. If I ever had children, I don't know if that's on my path, but that would definitely be a non-negotiable for me as well, is for them to be able to have an alternative education.
Mm-hmm.
I hated school as a kid, like just despise it. I questioned everything, like why do I need to be here for so long? Like, can we just cut out recess and lunch so I can go home? Like, this is just such a waste of my time. I hate
That's funny.
Yeah, it was not my jam. Like, I did well
Yeah,
in school and everything, but I was just like, literally, just give me the book, I'll read it, I'll do the test tomorrow, I'll ace it, and then just
yeah.
leave me alone.
You
Yeah.
were designed to be a digital nomad.
I guess. Honestly, I feel so, so lucky that I ended up being able to do that and travel the world and be able to work, because I didn't think that that was going to be a thing back in the day.
Yeah, you've done that whole, because you lived in, a couple of years living all over the place and we're just working remotely, right?
Yeah, yeah. I moved to Asia and I was there for 2.5 years. And then after I left, I just continued to travel for another 2.5 years. So spent a lot of time in Europe, down in Mexico. I actually lived in Salt Lake City for like 6 months, which was kind of random. But yeah, yeah. Spent some time in California as well. So it was
Yeah,
great.
it's so enriching to do that, and I think that if because I know you have a lot of entrepreneurs who listen to this, it's like if you build your lifestyle or to work your optimum lifestyle to work with the company, it also is going to nourish you in a deeper way. So for me, like I often find that sometimes the cold, wet, dark of winter gets to be a little bit much and kind of like dampens my spirits a bit. So it's like we're like, well, why don't we spend 6 weeks in Mexico and figure out how to do that? We actually have 10 families going with us. We're bringing 2 teachers, so we have like our own little schooling pod down there. We've got our whole compound that's rented out, and it's sort of super fun. It's like people go out at night, but everybody works during the day. They all work remotely, so we have our kind of little pop-up school, and 10 families that we like that are all going to be there with their kids. And so it's sort of like, why not design, I mean, it took a little while to get it off the ground, but it's like, why not design it that way? And then it's like you come out mid-February, the sun's starting to come back, and we're tanned and relaxed and happy, and have swimming in tropical water for the winter.
Yeah, absolutely. Not the worst way to do it. I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I'm kind of curious about what some of your daily practices are, maybe that allow you to show up for such a large mission and
Yeah.
company.
Well, I mean, I was joking with you before we started that it's like having two young children is knocked a few of those practices out, but I'm gradually adding them back in. So I'll tell you which ones I used to be a 2 hour a day meditator, and I found that was a great baseline. I did a lot of meditation, to just kind of deep solo dives, also time in the backcountry by myself. So I find there's something about like cultivating that inner channel to your own highest intelligence, inner guidance, that I find it's helpful to do something that's kind of like a solo nourishment of that. So I used to spend time on Shasta every year and spend 3 days in meditation up high on the mountain and just kind of get clear on a lot of things. And so what I've been doing now is building back in where I have 2 nights off and actually put a bed into our office space here in town, which is not that far from our house. And I sort of sleep here and unplug from the family matrix and get a chance to just like be in my own creative rhythm and juices. And so I think it's taking whatever time it is to sort of like really come back into your own knowing. So for me, some meditation does that, some yoga. I've been trying to get back into 2 days a week. I like automatic writing is a really interesting practice that I would recommend to people.
You
And so
mentioned that.
you cultivate the ability to just sort of turn down, and you can actually track it neurologically now. You turn down the centers of your brain connected more with ego and analytical mind. And then you could start, it's easiest to start with like just asking questions if you want, of like conversations with God style. Ask a question and then just see what starts to come is like a little inner voice, if you will, and just play with it. So I have thousands and thousands of pages of automatic writing, which is really helpful for business type stuff as well. And then I find deep dives are really good. Like we're leading this trip to Peru, and that's going to include doing plant medicine work with Puma and some of the other teachers down there. I find that that's, as it's coming online as a legal practice, people are talking more about it and how powerful that can be. And so I do think that can be a really powerful part of, I know a lot of entrepreneurs who get great business strategies from that. So meditation retreat, yoga retreat, could be a plant medicine type journey. All of those things are like kind of unplugging from the matrix of your responsibility and really taking the time to true yourself and clear out. For me, I think those are some of the key things I do now. And I think the other thing pivot is to really see work as a spiritual practice too, and relationships. So we're right now, because of the last 6 years are with kids under 3, like we're frankly a little bit tough on like keeping our marriage like vibrant and solid. And so now we're investing more time and doing things that are kind of like recharging our relationship, whether that's a 3-day getaway or doing some conscious communication practices, or exploring tantra or things like that are like kind of rekindling the relational field. So I find that it's like what I try to do is like sort of tune in about what's out of balance, and then sort of like what can I get into the schedule. So scheduling is another thing that I think of as a spiritual practice. Is it anything that's important, if you can put it on the schedule, it's like almost sending this message to your subconscious that it's important enough that you're going to validate it on the schedule somewhere. And so as an example, last Thursday I realized I haven't been as much in a solid writing practice, just running shift. And I have about 10-ish books that I want to do before I check out of this planet, and I've done a couple, but I was like, wow, if I really do, I have to kind of do one every 2 or 3 years. And so I just blocked out 12 writing days in the next year, in like sort of 3-day chunks throughout the next year. And so I'll just kind of work the schedule around that. And for me, I tend to write pretty quickly, so I can get a good chunk of a book done in those 12 days.
Wow.
And so
That is quick.
yeah. Well, I mean, I just figure, I can do 1,000 words an hour if I'm under pressure. And so if 5,000 words in an 8-hour day isn't like that
Sweat
hard.
it out.
It's just discipline. Just treat it like another work day, but you're just focused on writing a book and screen everything else out. So for me, that was a practice to say, oh, I'm a little bit out of balance. There's a part of me that's not getting fully expressed. It's easy when you're an entrepreneur to kind of like push everything else out to the side, but then those little parts are like the writing part of me is like, hey, what about me? It's like, well, I'm not getting to express, I'm not getting to do this. And You've been encouraging me around podcasting, and so I was tuning in about that, and so I started putting that in the calendar, and I haven't started doing it yet, but I'm starting to think about it, and I'm going to put it into motion to sort of create my own podcast. Actually, two of them I'm thinking, but so I think that it's like the more we can stay really tune in, what's the expression of our highest self that wants to come into the world, and then schedule in the things that are going to allow us to do that at the optimum level, and keep our energy up, keep our excitement up, so we're not burning ourselves out week after week, and then we have to kind of do an emergency intervention and just like, oh, I gotta, it's more like each week you kind of get recharged and rebooted, and are able to move forward. So I think, there's the basics. There's making sure you get a good night of sleep, making sure you get some exercise. But I think, for me, some yoga, some clear open space that's just kind of unstructured is really important for me to just kind of dream into new possibilities. And also, the other thing I've been working on in terms of my schedule is protecting my Fridays more from any sort of like everyday type meetings. So it's really like Fridays becomes the day to dilate, look instead of micro, really kind of go more macro, and look at some of the larger societal change things. I wrote a book on kind of conscious politics, and there's things that I want to kind of write and think about there that are important as well. So I find that over time, it's like, because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have more stuff that gets scheduled, and you have to kind of get more disciplined about, can that be a 20-minute thing? Can it be a 15-minute thing? Can that be once a month versus or twice a month? And making sure that you're sort of each little thing that you put your time into is dialed in to the optimum level, and so that you keep your energy high and moving on to the next thing, rather than feel like you're bogged down, or some part of you is like resenting that, it's like, oh, you're working too hard, you're not getting to do any creative writing. So that's kind of optimizing ourself within a larger system. So it's not easy, frankly, but I feel excited that I've been getting better at it now that we're out of the first 3-year window with the girls, because there's just like, it was a little bit harder to get traction while we were up at night with them or whatnot. And so I still feel like, I feel happy that as a CEO of a mid-sized company, I work a 40-hour work week, and I spend a lot of time with the girls, and I generally don't work on the weekends. And I keep, I really try to make my 9 to 5 like hyper productive for the week, but I try to keep shift from intruding much into the rest, and then design these annual cycles. So that means, making sure that every part of me that really needs to be fed and honored is getting some airtime in the annual schedule, or the monthly schedule, or the weekly schedule. And then I'm not kind of subtly resenting what I'm carrying. It's more just like, okay, this is part of who I am as being CEO, but part of who I am as being a writer, and part of who I am as being a thought leader, and part of who I am as being a dad. And so that each of those things has their prioritization, and then putting in schedule is sort of like, just like, it's like sending a little signal. This is important. You can always change it. You don't have to stick to it. You don't have to be rigid, but it's just like, you're just sending the message that you look at the design of your week, your month, and your year, and you can feel like, oh, all parts of me that need to be expressed or have their chance to be expressed, and there's cycles of replenishment and rejuvenation that are built into.
I love that. That sounds so very balanced. I try to do that myself. I'm feeling called to look at my schedule again. Something about summertime for me, it's like a lot of, the regimented things that I generally do throughout the other 3 seasons, just everything goes to hell. I don't know why.
Well, if I were you, I would say, wow, I mean, because you're Canadian, right? So it's like there's more of an annual cycle. The further north you get, because of the light cycles, is that
Yep.
like you get more hunkered down and a little somewhat, lower energy oftentimes in winter. And then summer is like, exuberant. You want to
Yes.
celebrate life. And so,
Yeah.
if I were you, I would design a 9-month schedule where you've kind of got 9 months of the year, and then 3 months you create as like much space as you can. To just savor that time of the year and that function, because then you're working with your rhythms rather than fighting them too.
Absolutely. And it does feel like that. And even though, the winter season does feel like more hunker down and less energy, I do tend to get a lot more things done, I think, because I have to be a lot more
Totally.
regimented. because the darkness and the
Oh,
cold.
cold bodies kind of move faster too. It's like I grew up in Minnesota, so I'm kind of virtually Canadian. So I feel like I got that in my bones, where I would crank like all through the winter, but because you're always a little bit cold and a little bit like, okay, I got to keep my hustle on here, and then summers is like get outside,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That totally makes sense.
you
I'm
know.
kind of curious because you mentioned your meditation practice. Is there a specific type of meditation that you do?
I've done a lot of the Goenka style of Vipassana, which is more of a scanning the sensations of your body. And there's layers to it that unfold over time. It's hard to get to the deeper layers if you're not in a retreat. But you can, I think that what I like about kind of full body scans top to bottom is it's sort of an embodiment practice, is you're bringing your awareness into the subtle sensations throughout your body, not just your breath. You start with your breath, but then as you get your mind more focused, you kind of scan up and down. So from your tippy toes on the way up. And in a deep meditation retreat, you can actually penetrate your attention deeper in. So you're kind of feeling subtle sensations in your liver or lungs, or you kind of become like this. There's like this ring of awareness that can go up and down. And it's like, there's something about that ring of awareness that actually like cleanses things and brings things to the surface. But that's like kind of hard to get to, for me at least, outside of a retreat. But I just like scanning the subtle sensations, and it's like keeping it agenda free. With that said, though, I do sometimes find it's useful if there's something that I'm particularly challenged by, to kind of just hold it in consciousness and just see if something comes. So like there's a kind of a practice of getting more embodied with the sensations and just being in that still point. And but then I just hold it, I'm not trying to solve it or puzzle it out with my mind, but it's almost like you just hold it in consciousness, and then sometimes interesting guidance or crystallization of things can come in too. So that's like, I don't even know what that practice would be. So I haven't found, I did some mantra based stuff early on, and I didn't find it quite as like, just didn't fit me as well for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But so those are the two things I do with meditation. But I think that, a lot of the benefits frankly just come from just being really still, and just allowing your body to unfold. And I often find that there's something about releasing subtle energy patterns. Oh, I should mention that body work. I love body work as well, not just because it feels good, but I just got that on my calendar as a weekly thing. So on Tuesday nights, I have a body work now every week. And part of that is like brings your conscious awareness through every little part of your body, because we tend to subtly pull out of different parts of our body when we have a lot going on. So we're like just working at the keyboard, and so all of our attention gets up here and in our hands, and then that leads to a diminishment of energy when your tension isn't sort of equally distributed through your body, so your energy starts to wane a bit. So I find like somewhat regular body work, weekly if you can, or at least once a month, helps to kind of reincarnate in your whole body and kind of release all these subtle patterns. And I noticed that a lot in meditation too, where it's like, oh, there'd be kind of like a little muscle here that was like a little contracted, and then it just starts to release and open up. And so I think that's part of what happens, is that you end up with a more even flow of attention and energy through your body, which creates more center, creates more capacity to enjoy life, I think.
I'm actually not familiar with body work. Like, is it a physical thing that you're doing, or are you putting intention on
No, I'm just
certain?
like massage,
Oh,
like
massage. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, body work.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be anything, but I tend to. I've gotten a lot. I worked for Esalen for a while, and I've always just, both Devaa and myself just love massage and body work, and just I say body work because massage tends to only think of just the more pleasurable kind, whereas body work can get lots of different. There's neuromuscular, which I've done. There's things that are more about kind of releasing the subtler patterns that kind of get constellated in your body, but for me, like that's been really key to overall well-being, is to make sure I'm prioritizing some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just purchased a program. It's called Functional Patterns. And I'm really into functional type exercises. A girlfriend of mine was training me over the winter, and it's a really interesting type of exercise when you're doing like a lot of twisting movements and things. So it really helps prime your body to be able to I don't know, handle things like getting up off the floor as you age. And the cool thing about this program is like the first like 4 or 5 weeks of it are mostly body work, right? So you're doing a lot of tissue releases with medicine balls and lacrosse balls and all of these sorts of things. And it's really interesting. And what caught my attention is some of the before and afters on their sales page, because they're working with people from all walks of life. So there's some people that have things like, you know, certain disfigurements or things with their bodies. And it's like the before and afters are absolutely miraculous. And I find like as I'm getting a little bit older, I notice that there's certain things that are tense. I get up in the morning and sometimes my ankles are a little bit sore. And I'm like, okay, no, I got to do something about this. And that deep tissue release makes such a huge difference. And it also really helps to bring more hydration to your fascia and your tissues, which is quite fascinating.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I mean, yeah, we've at Shift we've got a bunch of different programs too, like things like Feldenkrais and somatic movement. There's a lot of interest in this area. Particularly, it's good for aging. Qigong, a great system for like circulating your energy so that you can, particularly live very long lives. A lot of the Qigong masters are living into their hundreds and very vibrant. And Feldenkrais also really strong with helping to have healthy aging as well. So I think there's what depends on what you're drawn to. It's like, but I think all of those are great. So like for me, it's like body work and hot yoga are sort of like the two combos that kind of create the most movement for me to open my body up and feel really good. But I also, I respect all these different modalities, and I think that it's the more I like to kind of maintain a cross training curiosity. So it's sort of like sample something, try this, try that. It's like maybe you should try a biomat. Maybe what about this? And it's like, should we try different practices or different health supplements or different plant medicines? I just started taking Triphala with meals, based upon a call I did with an Ayurvedic doctor. And so I think we're kind of in this age where we're getting to harvest all the wisdom from around the world. And so whether that's creating like a really kick-ass high vibration smoothie or that's going to power you up for the day, or maybe you're drawn to some kind of forms of subtle energy work or healing, or I'm thinking about going to an Ayurvedic physician because I feel like they have a really good philosophy around keeping your energy systems flowing and aging well. Since I'm 52 now, so I have to kind of basically pace myself a little better with small daughters, and I don't want to burn myself out while they're still needing to have a dad that they can wrestle with, and and so I think
Yoga is great for that.
yeah, so I think that's part of it. It's like and if you're an entrepreneur, it's easy to neglect those things, but then you start to burn out, and it manifests ultimately in business that you're creating too. Is if you're not happy and fulfilled, it's going to have downstream effects on other people.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Well, I think that is a fabulous place to close. We're at time now. So thank you so much for that,
Great.
Stephen. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about the Shift Network, you also mentioned, I think you have a couple of books out, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, Sacred America, Sacred World is a little bit more big picture. How does America evolve our political system, which I think is imperative. I did a Radical Spirit book a number of years back. There'll be more in the future. So I think the easiest thing is to get on the theshiftnetwork.com email list, see what all we're up to, and I'll be starting a podcast of my own or two to sort of get more of the stuff that I'm noodling on, because I really, what I think, it's exciting to harvest all the different wisdom traditions and apply them in our lives. And I think the next growing edge is like, how do we redesign some of our societal systems in a way that's sustainable, that's conscious, that really works for everybody. And so I like to also put a bit of focus on some of that collective redesign. Like I've been thinking a lot about the up-leveling of the Republican Party in the United States, and how does that actually happen? Instead of just critiquing it, it's like, what needs to happen to kind of reduce some of the anti-democratic things that are going on, and to channel the conservative impulse in a healthier direction. So it's just those kind of questions. I think it becomes a little bit like, as we realize more of what we're here to do, then also looking at the ways that we can make contributions to the collective.
I love that. Well, I'm so looking forward to those podcasts, and I know I'm going to get to support you on getting those launched. So I'm excited about that. And we will place some links in the show notes so people can check out the Shift Network and all of the wonderful programs that we have to offer. And yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on, Stephen. I really, really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
again, just enjoy you as a person. And I'm very grateful that I get to work with you.
Likewise, I love working with you too. So thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen.
Bye-bye, all.
Thanks so much for sharing your time and energy with us today. We'd love to hear your feedback on how our podcast has impacted your life, and are also open to suggestions for new and interesting topics. Please leave your comments with a quick review to help us grow this magical community of wellness warriors and light workers. Every month, we select one lucky reviewer to win our big magic box containing all 3 of our beautiful magic lattes. To connect with us further, check us out on Instagram at wild_remedies. Thank you again, and see you at the next episode.